On April 22nd, 2022, I had the honor and privilege of interviewing Luis Elizondo. And one of the criticisms that I received for that interview is that my emotional demeanor was excessive. I was too enthusiastic, too passionate, too fired up, or as in some people's perspective, unhinged. And I want to explore why I had the demeanor that I had when I interviewed Luis Elizondo, and whether or not such a demeanor was justified or just a manifestation proving that maybe I ain't wrapped too tight. On April 22nd, the day my interview was published, Jeremy Corbell made a little video with this commentary. UFO Jesus is going off. Do yourself a favor and listen to this exceptional and important discussion between Post-Disclosure and Lue Elizondo. This is a great conversation, and I applaud these gentlemen. Then someone responded, no more coffee for this dude, to which Oliver Wood responded, perfect amount of passion. It expresses exactly the public frustrations with our government on this topic. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. I hope Congress themselves watch this interview. So why am I so overwhelmingly frustrated toward my government on account of how they've dealt with this issue? And the reason is quite simple. Now, the skeptic would tell you the reason that I'm so animated is because I'm gullible and I lack critical thinking skills. And the consequence of that is I've just gone down this deep rabbit hole, and it would really benefit me if I got out and just had the talking points they do, that all the witnesses from 70 plus years are just misidentifying. And they may be right, but I got to call it like I see it. So from my perspective, why I am so frustrated is because if you look at the historical record going back 70 plus years, what the US government has done is they've provided official talking points on the UFO issue. With the close of Project Blue Book, for example, they said that they had no longer have any interest in this issue, which of course ended up being a lie because we learned about OSAP, which started in, I think, 2008, and we learned about ATIP with Lue Elizondo. So that was a lie. But the theme from the US government has always been, it's not a national security threat. It doesn't represent technology that surpasses known physics. And essentially, there's nothing to see here. Now, in the past 4.4 years, they've changed their tune on that. If you just look at the June UFO report, 2021, now they're saying, oh, well, actually, some of this technology appears to demonstrate technological capabilities that are beyond our understanding. And even Barack Obama recently said that we have records and footage of UAP maneuvering in ways that are not understandable, and so forth. So there has been mixed messages. On the surface, we've been given this talking point, there's nothing to see here. But if you look at, just as an example, the UFO incident of West Hall, Australia, April 1966. Now, Australia is part of the Five Eyes Alliance, so these governments share information with one another. According to the report, hundreds of school children witnessed a UAP in the sky that subsequently landed very close to the school. Some of the children reportedly got close to the object, could feel the heat coming off it, could hear a hum from the machine. And some of the witnesses said that the area was cordoned off by the by the military, the Air Force, by the police, so that no one could get onto the where the incident occurred, disrupt anything with where the incident occurred. And that when they assembled after this happened, the children assembled by the headmaster said, You did not see anything. This did not happen. And if you talk about it, you're going to get in trouble. Similar to that, James Fox from the Phenomenon documentary was able to get a witness on camera from the event who was a science teacher. And he relayed that one evening, two older gentlemen showed up at his door. And they asked him to give a description of what he saw. They then proceeded to tell the teacher, "You didn't see this. You made it all up. Possibly because you were drunk." And that they would have to inform the education department and that you would lose your job as a result. Then the teacher continues and says that he was told that if he talks about this incident, he would be prosecuted under the Official Secrets Act, and that there wasn't anything significant that happened during this quote-unquote event, but that he knew that there was, and that he was told that he has to remain quiet about it. Now here's yet another example of someone being told to keep their mouth shut about their sighting and or being harassed regarding it. This is told by now Dr. Bob Jacobs, who from 1963 to 1966 was the person in charge of photo-optical instrumentation for Vandenberg Air Force Base. As the story goes, he recorded during one of his operations a UAP circling a dummy warhead at the edge of space. He kept his mouth shut about that incident for 17 years. And then he was a professor on a 9-month stint, not getting a whole lot of money for it. So during the summer, he wanted to make more money. So he decided to submit his story to a magazine, and it did get published. Shortly after that, this is what Bob Jacob has to say regarding how his world changed.
So I started getting telephone calls late at night at my home. I'm not going to say the words because I don't want to be censored here, but a voice would say, it always ended up with, "You're going down, MF." You can interpret what MF means. They would leave this message on my, remember answering machines? We used to have those. Well, they would leave the message on my answering machine. They were fearless. One night, my wife and I came home from a movie, and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and the voice said, "Fireworks in your mailbox at night. Oh, what a beautiful sight. You're going down, MF." And there was a boom. My wife and I went to the door. We lived in the country, and we had a rural mailbox. It was on fire. They had blown up my mailbox while I was talking to them on the phone. "You're going down, MF."
Now, this is ubiquitous. If you look at UFO history, it is not uncommon by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not a UFO historian. Maybe someday I will be. But if you talk to a UFO historian, they'll be able to provide you on the spot an enormous amount of stories where people have gone on the record saying they've been harassed and or been told to shut their mouth following a UAP encounter. Now, it's one thing to make the claim that everyone is misidentifying UAP when they see them. They're really seeing X or Y or Z. And by the way, even your most ardent ufologists will tell you that 95% of sightings are misidentifications. But I digress. It's quite another claim to state that all the people that are saying that officials told them to shut their mouth or harass them are somehow getting that wrong. Now, I don't buy that. That's baloney. And so let's circle back to why I was so passionate when I spoke to Luis Elizondo when I interviewed him. Because we're dealing with a situation, in my humble opinion, maybe not humble enough, but it's still an opinion, where for 70 years, the U.S. government officially has said there's nothing to see here. But if you look how they've dealt with this subject outside of officialdom, they've harassed people like they did to Dr. Bob Jacobs, and I do believe him. I don't know what element of the U.S. government did that. You could argue that it wasn't the government, that it was another entity. Okay, that's possible, but every single time? I doubt that. But my point is, outside of officialdom, the message is clear. They took this issue extremely seriously, to the point where they're telling people to shut their mouth about it, to the point where they're harassing people who have come forward about their experiences. And it's not a one-off. It's not an isolated event. This has happened over and over and over again, people coming forward discussing this. And if you're a skeptic and you think this is all a bunch of BS, well, what happens when inevitably there are open hearings within the United States Congress? What happens when inevitably, in my opinion, this continues to escalate and more people come out from the woodwork about how the government or elements of the government have treated them as a result of their sighting? Is the narrative going to support my contention, or is it going to support your contention? Well, I don't know, but I feel fully justified to call it the way I see it, because I don't think I'm grasping at straws. And I do not think that my passion when I interviewed Elizondo was misplaced. I was planning to go into examples of the huge costs of this policy by the U.S. government to pretend like this issue is all nonsense. Pilots, for example, have been taken off flight duty because they reported a UAP and then they were perceived as not fit to continue their profession. I know of people that have had trouble with relationships because the world views them as crazy, because the assessment of UAP is that it's all nonsense. The ripples that this lie has caused on humanity is perhaps beyond comprehension. And even on a more arguably trivial level, skeptics and believers are debating back and forth. When there's a very plausible potential, at least, and I assess this is the case, that the scientific data has already been collected and the conclusions have already been made, but it's been insulated from most of 8 billion of us. There's a very small percentage that has seen the data. And I did a video in January where I shared what my source told me about what's been going on between the Congress and the Pentagon. And that person told me that the Pentagon and the Congress are fighting over control over the UAP issue. And that one of the reasons the Congress is so livid, it's not just that because they've come to the realization that they've been lied to for 70 years, but it's because loyal pilots who have served their country honorably have been told they're insane when they see UAP. All the while, there are people in the Pentagon that know full well this phenomena is real and that it's not coming from adversaries. Nevertheless, this is also why I was very passionate when I was speaking to Elizondo during my interview. This is an extraordinarily wide, sweeping problem that infiltrates many sectors of reality that you may not even think about unless you actually contemplate it sufficiently. Regarding what UFO confirmation could do for our planet, this is what the director of the Phenomenon documentary, James Fox, had to say.
The other prong to that whole potential revelation is, I think it could be just exactly what the world needs right now. I think that it would force us to see ourselves for who we really are. And that's one race and one planet. And I firmly believe that. It sounds like a kumbaya moment here, but how could you not? How could it not have a unifying effect on all of humanity? So I'm very optimistic about it. And I think even if it's a little scary, we don't have a lot of all the answers, that's okay.
In June of 2020, I co-authored a very long article with Bryce Zabel covering this very reflection, many people intuit that UFO confirmation, or as the vernacular tends to favor, UFO disclosure, would have a powerful positive impact on human civilization. Now, I'll grant you that that is speculation, because ultimately we don't know the sociological shift that would inevitably occur from such a revelation. But I would argue that we're probably in a situation right now where risk-taking can be particularly justified. We have environmental ruin, nuclear proliferation, people don't like how I pronounce it, nuclear proliferation. And we as a species are very much black and white thinkers, very binary in how we perceive the world. And I don't think it does us any favors. We're very tribalistic. We're warmongering. We have our issues. In short, we're a real piece of work. And I don't know if we can survive. So it's like, well, it's not looking good. Might as well throw this into the pile and see what happens. Because maybe there's just not much to lose at this point. But I think it's noteworthy that a lot of people intuit that such a revelation would benefit humankind. I think it would definitely humble us, and I think it would definitely make us more nuanced thinkers and less black and white thinkers. I don't see how that wouldn't happen. So many assumptions we made about our universe and about what's possible would be removed overnight. All of the mantras that skeptics have repeated over and over again for decades, like it's gospel, would be flushed down the toilet overnight. And a lot of the people that express those mantras are considered some of our finest thinkers. So we would have to rethink a lot of things, and therefore I think we would become more nuanced. Probably what we need. Are there risks to UFO confirmation? Yes. But there's also risks to not doing it. And at this point, I would argue we need to take the risk of doing it and let the chips fall where they may, because it's not looking good for our species. And yet again, the fact that this opportunity has been delayed for so long based upon so few people's perception of what's best for humanity, well, that also contributed to my passion when I was interviewing Lue Elizondo. I've had about 5 conversations with people that claim they've seen UAP unambiguously and at close range and with a lot of details that make it unlikely that they were dealing with something prosaic, if indeed they're telling the truth regarding their experience. And I would argue this contributes to why I was so passionate when I was interviewing Elizondo, because something is going on. And in my opinion, the U.S. government and potentially other governments, and I would think they do too, because they got a vast military apparatus as well, some of the countries at least, have the scientific data. And we are wasting so much time when we could collectively, all 8 billion of us, strive to get to the bottom of this mystery. Where are UAP coming from? Who is behind the wheel? What is their agenda? But instead, our entire civilization, even up until this point, assesses more or less, at least that's the consensus, that there's really nothing very interesting to this, when indeed I think it's wrong. I think there's something incredibly profound to this. And then when we get UFO confirmation, one way or the other, which is inevitable, all 8 billion of us will be like, well, wow, that's interesting. Let's make the effort to figure out what's going on. And every day that doesn't happen, every 24-hour period, we're just wasting more time where we could be applying ourselves to understand what's going on. Now I'm going to share with you one of my friends on UFO Twitter. Her name is Teresa. She's one of my favorite thinkers in this arena. Very smart, very objective, sharp. She shared with me an incredible experience that she had as a teenager. And she's a very credible person. I don't think she's LARPing. I don't think she's making this up. I believe that what she told me, she experienced, at least more or less. Does that mean it has to be alien? Not necessarily, but it's highly anomalous. So you can make of it what you will. Let's dig into her experience. I'm going to share it to you as she wrote it to me. There was the one when I was a teenager that followed our car. My older brother was driving and his best friend was in the back with me. There was another guy up front that we had dropped off right before it happened. My brother couldn't see it, just the light, and he was freaked out because both his friend and I were freaking out when it started following the car. Things got weirder. The horn started going off by itself, wouldn't stop. Then the tape, parentheses, didn't have a CD player in that car, stopped playing, ejected with so much force that it flew in the back and hit me in the chest. I got so scared at that point, I think I was crying, definitely screaming, begging for it to go away. And all of a sudden, right before we reached home, it just disappeared. When we came into the house, the TV was all static, and there were symbols showing through, running vertically up and down the left side of the screen. My parents said it had been doing that for about 5 minutes. My brother's friend got on the phone and called his dad, freaking out, telling him the story. The whole thing was pretty wild. She also said, during this same time, several people in the area were talking about seeing strange lights, UFOs. Some girl videoed the activity at her house. Wish I had seen it. My husband wasn't there, but he can confirm I've told him the story since we got together when I was 17. Plus, my parents would remember. And then she mentioned to me that she got another detail because she was just recently talking to her brother where that she didn't remember, but now it jogged her memory. One of the AC vents flew out. Now, that's a wild story. But I'll tell you, this is a pattern. As wacky and ridiculous as it sounds, this is a pattern that has emerged over and over again from disparate people. That when UFOs come in close proximity, whether it's of a plane or whether it's of a car, stuff starts to go haywire. Maybe it's a result of the propulsion system, and somehow it's interacting with the electronics or the interface of cars or planes. But it is remarkable how these kind of details emerge over and over again, people that have been in close proximity to UAP. Now, interestingly, this was an interaction that I had today, and it encompasses Teresa, who told me the story that I just shared with you. I wrote, "Why do I believe some UAP are likely non-human intelligence? The patterns that emerge over and over again from disparate people, such as the incredible sighting that Teresa told me she had as a teenager and how her car went haywire as a result. It's the patterns." Jerry Boggs, a big skeptic, replied, "And you believe her without any proof whatsoever? Was it because her sighting was quote-unquote incredible and that she told you her car went haywire, like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind? So all one has to do to convince you is throw in detail that's quote-unquote incredible." To which Teresa responded, "I had never watched that movie at that point. Watched it the first time a few months back. Nor did I know such things occurred along with UFO sightings back then. But I don't really care if you believe me or not. I can't make anyone believe me." Let's wind this video down by giving you a little update on what's going on with the UAP issue and the United States Congress. I'll provide you with a few quotes from one of the best journalists covering this issue, named Christopher Sharp of Liberation Times. This article was published on May 3rd, and the title is, "UFO Public Hearings Are Now a Real Possibility, and Congress is Extremely Upset About the Current Situation." Speaking to Liberation Times, the insider stated, "Congress is extremely upset with how unhurried DOD has been with regards to standing up and empowering AOIMSG, the UFO program. Senators and their staffers are wanting answers about what UAP are and where they are from. These same senators have seen the classified videos of UAP displaying performance capabilities well beyond anything in our arsenal, and they want answers. The videos, as remarkable as they are, only led to more questions. Questions such as, how are they doing what they are doing? Where are they from? And why are they acting in the manner we have seen? Congress cannot make informed decisions without this data, and the DoD bureaucracy cannot move as rapidly as Congress needs it to. Congress will hold people and programs accountable. I would not be surprised if there were open hearings in the near future. The people want and deserve them. Here's one more citation from the article. Liberation Times spoke to former ATIP director Lue Elizondo about the prospect of hearings. Elizondo cautioned that amnesty would play an important role in the success of any possible hearings, commenting, equally important is providing Congress and the American people with any information concerning UAPs obtained through legacy efforts to include insights gleaned and lessons learned. Furthermore, in our fervor to understand the truth, we must ensure that this does not become a witch hunt, especially if public hearings become a reality. Instead, I suggest we offer some sort of amnesty in order that individuals who may have historically been associated with this topic can provide their insights freely and without fear. Only then can we ensure Congress, the executive branch, and the American people receive the information that they deserve. I'm going to end this video with a tweet from Danny Silva of silvarecords.com. This is one of my favorite tweets that he's ever published, and it's worth having a little short discussion of before we say our goodbyes. What if the more hate thought leaders get, and the more hate the subject gets, means we are winning? It means more eyes are on the subject, critiquing, debating. Hating comes with fame. It's not going to stop. It's going to get much worse the more mainstream the topic becomes. Strap in. Now, I think Danny Silva's point is on point. The UAP subject is controversial, and skeptics and cynics, haters and the like, don't give a damn about it if it has no credibility. On the contrary, it has overwhelming credibility. 60 Minutes, members of Congress, former directors of Central Intelligence Agency, former directors of National Intelligence, I think, what's his name? James Clapper, who he served as the director of just about every agency within the United States government. Bill Nelson, the administrator of NASA, talking about UAP in a sober way, in a credible way, not in a laughing way. That's what gets the goat of the skeptic. Because they believe they're coming on the scene to help with rational thinking, rational perspective, rational thought processes. And I think they're wrong. I think UAP are real. I don't know where they come from. I'm not going to pretend like I know that they represent non-human technology, but it appears that way to me when you look at the historical record. I don't think this is re-emerging as the result of a mind virus that just doesn't want to go away as a cycle. No. I think it's re-emerging because it's real. Because there's ground truth to the phenomenon, whatever it may end up being. And that will escalate. Right. That will lead to open public hearings within the United States Congress, and that will control and have great power over the narrative because people will be subpoenaed. People will have to speak about this under oath. Members of government, members of legacy UAP programs. And they're not going to say it's all a bunch of BS. They're going to say it's all real. That's my opinion. That's what I think is coming down the pipe. Now, you are not going away, skeptic. You're right here with me, baby. You're right here with me. You'd only go away if this goes away. This doesn't go away. You're sticking it out, baby. You're not riding off into the sunset. You got to do your part, and I will do my part. And in the end, the truth wins. And you may be right. I don't think you are. But I will give you a little salute, and we'll call this video a day. I'll see you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.